LiberalViewer presents.
Mr. President, you just said that you reject President Putin's approach to Syria and his attacks on moderate opposition forces. You said it was a recipe for disaster. But what are you willing to do to stop President Putin and protect moderate opposition fighters? Would you consider imposing sanctions against Russia? Would you go so far as to equip moderate rebels with anti-aircraft weapons to protect them from Russian air attacks? And how do you respond to critics who say Putin is outsmarting you, that he took a measure of you in Ukraine, and he felt he could get away with this?
Yeah, I've heard it all before. Thank you. I've got to say, I'm always struck by the degree to which not just critics, but I think people buy this narrative. Let's think about this. So when I came into office 7.5 years ago, America had precipitated the worst financial crisis in history, dragged the entire world into a massive recession. We were involved in 2 wars with almost no coalition support. U.S. World opinion about the United States was at a nadir. We were just barely above Russia at that time, and I think potentially slightly below China's. And we were shedding 800,000 jobs a month, and so on and so forth. And today, we're the strongest large advanced economy in the world. Probably one of the few bright spots in the world economy. Our approval ratings have gone up. We are more active on more international issues and forge international responses to everything from Ebola to countering ISIL. Meanwhile, Mr. Putin comes into office at a time when the economy had been growing and they were trying to pivot to a more diversified economy. And as a consequence of these brilliant moves, their economy is contracting 4% this year. They are isolated in the world community, subject to sanctions that are not just applied by us, but by what used to be some of their closest trading partners. Their main allies in the Middle East were Libya and Syria, Mr. Gaddafi and Mr. Assad, and those countries are falling apart, and he's now just had to send in troops and aircraft in order to prop up this regime at the risk of alienating the entire Sunni world. So, what was the question again? No, but I think it's really interesting to understand. Russia's not stronger as a consequence of what they've been doing. They get attention. The sanctions against Ukraine are still in place. And what I've consistently offered, from a position of strength, because the United States is not subject to sanctions, and we're not contracting 4% a year, what I've offered is a pathway whereby they can get back onto a path of growth and do right by their people. So Mr. Putin's actions have been successful only insofar as it's boosted his poll ratings inside of Russia, which may be why the Beltway is so impressed, because that tends to be the measure of success. Of course, it's easier to do when you've got a state-controlled media. But this is not a smart strategic move on Russia's part. And what Russia's now done is not only committed its own troops into a situation in which the overwhelming majority of the Syrian population sees it now as an enemy, but the Sunni population throughout the Middle East is going to see it as a supporter, an endorser of those barrel bombs landing on kids at a time when Russia has a significant Muslim population inside of its own borders that it needs to worry about. So I want Russia to be successful. This is not a contest between the United States and Russia. It is in our interest for Russia to be a responsible, effective actor on the international stage that can share burdens with us, along with China, along with Europe, along with Japan, along with other countries, because the problems we have are big. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Putin, having made this doubling down of the support he's provided to Mr. Assad, recognizes that this is not going to be a good long-term strategy, and that he works instead to bring about a political settlement, just as I hope that they can resolve the issues with Ukraine in a way that recognizes Russian equities but upholds the basic principle of sovereignty and independence that the Ukrainian people should enjoy like everybody else. But until that time, we're going to continue to have tensions and we're going to continue to have differences. But we're not going to make Syria into a proxy war between the United States and Russia. That would be bad strategy on our part. This is a battle between Russia, Iran, and Assad against the overwhelming majority of the Syrian people. Our battle is with ISIL, and our battle is with the entire international community to resolve the conflict in a way that can end the bloodshed and end the refugee crisis and allow people to be at home, work, grow food, shelter their children, send those kids to school. That's the side we're on. This is not some, superpower chessboard contest. And anybody who frames it in that way isn't paying very close attention to what's been happening on the chessboard.
YouTube, you decide.